Hello again, and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Thursday, the 30th of June. I'm Andrew Wilson, and this is Scotland at 7. This evening, I have the latest daily update from Ukraine on day 127 of the illegal Russian war of aggression, and then I will look at the headlines from Scotland and around the world. Ukraine's armed forces claim to have expelled Russian forces from the strategically important Black Sea island Zmyny, better known as Snake Island. They said, during the night, as a result of a successful military operation with our missile and artillery units on Snake Island, the enemy hastily evacuated the remnants of the garrison and 2 speedboats and probably left the island. Currently, Zmyny is covered with fire. Explosions are heard. The final results of the operation are being investigated. The frontline eastern city of Lysychansk is under relentless shelling as Russia presses on with its offensive in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities said they were trying to evacuate residents from the city, the focus of Russia's attacks, where about 15,000 people remain. The regional governor, Sergei Haidai, told Ukrainian television, "Fighting is going on all the time. Russians are constantly on the offensive. There is no let-up. Absolutely everything is being shelled." One person has been killed and 6 people have been injured, including an 11-year-old child, by Russian attacks in the Kharkiv region, according to the latest status update of Oleh Syniehubov, the governor of Kharkiv. The European Court of Human Rights has said it has issued an order to Russia to ensure that 2 UK citizens captured for fighting Ukrainian forces do not face the death penalty. NATO leaders yesterday announced a new strategic concept in response to Russia's war against Ukraine, describing Moscow as the most significant and direct threat to allies' security and stability. Leaders also pledged further help to Kyiv and agreed on a package of support aimed at modernizing the country's defense sector. Russia's former president and current Deputy Security Council chairman, Dmitry Medvedev, said sanctions against Moscow may be seen as an act of aggression and justification for war. Sweden will send more anti-tank weapons and machine guns to Ukraine, Sweden's defense ministry said today, and trade through Lithuania to the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad could return to normal within days as officials edge towards a compromise deal, 2 sources familiar with the matter told Reuters. UK government complacency is allowing Russian dirty money to flow into the UK despite the war in Ukraine, according to the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee. Ukraine announced the largest exchange of prisoners of war since Russia invaded, securing the release of 144 of its soldiers, including 95 who had defended the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol. Ukrainian military intelligence said that most of the Ukrainians released had serious injuries, including burns and amputations, and are now receiving medical care. And President Zelensky has announced the end of diplomatic ties between Ukraine and Syria after the Russian ally recognized the independence of eastern Ukraine's 2 Russian-backed republics, Donetsk and Luhansk. Funding of £65 million has been provided by the Scottish Government as part of the UK's military aid for Ukraine. It will make up part of the £1 billion being provided for state-of-the-art equipment, including sophisticated air defence systems and thousands of pieces of vital kit for Ukrainian soldiers. This follows £4 million in financial aid provided by the Scottish Government for humanitarian assistance in Ukraine and a further £3 million worth of medical supplies. Our Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, said, "Scotland has been clear from the start that we condemn Russia's unprovoked, illegal invasion of Ukraine. Scotland stands for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, at home and abroad. We have become a place of refuge and sanctuary for displaced people from Ukraine and have done all we can to get help to those fleeing the country to escape the violence. This further funding is to assist Ukrainian armed forces to fight Russian aggression and the unspeakable brutality being perpetrated. We have agreed to provide funding," she continued, "on this occasion given the clear need to maximise the international effort to support Ukraine. However, we are clear that this must not be seen as any kind of precedent which leads to devolved budgets being used to help pay for clearly reserved policy areas. The Scottish Government has already provided financial aid of £4 million to help provide basic humanitarian assistance in health, water and sanitation, and shelter for those fleeing Ukraine. Of this amount, £1 million was allocated to the British Red Cross and SCIAF, members of the Standing Humanitarian Emergency Panel. £2 million was given via the DEC appeal launched in Scotland, and £1 million went to UNICEF for life-saving services and family support. In addition, 5 consignments of medical supplies have so far been sent by the Scottish Government to Poland for onward transport to Ukraine. That totals 156 pallets worth, almost £3 million. A statutory body set up to monitor EU citizens' rights after Brexit has been granted permission for a judicial review of Home Office rules which impact up to 2.5 million European nationals living in the UK. The Independent Monitoring Authority applied to the High Court to challenge a Home Office decision to remove the rights of people living in the UK for less than 5 years before Brexit if they do not apply in time for permanent residency status. The rules mean that they would be classed as undocumented migrants and lose their rights to reside, work, rent property, or access services, including the NHS. At worst, they could face deportation. The IMA argues the rules were a breach of the withdrawal agreement between the UK and the EU, which guaranteed the rights of EU citizens who were in the country before Brexit. Allowing a judicial review, Mr Justice Saini said the IMA's case is plainly arguable. He added, there is also a real issue as to the potential application of EU law in the interpretation of the withdrawal agreement. He said it was of important public interest given the huge numbers with so-called pre-settled status who were obliged to apply for permanent settled status from the Home Office before their pre-settled status runs out at the end of 5 years in the UK. The judge said resolution of these issues is a matter of public interest, given the potentially large numbers of those with pre-settled status. The claim should be resolved well before any such individual is exposed to potential risks of a failure to apply for settled status. That date, he said, is, I understand, the start of 2023. That date refers to the 5-year anniversary of the pilot launch of the settled status scheme in December 2018. Under the Home Office rules, any of the 2.5 million people who have been granted pre-settled status who fail to apply for settled status will lose all their rights to education, healthcare, benefits and employment, and access to the NHS. Campaigners, including the 3 million group, fear many vulnerable people with pre-settled status will fail the Home Office test and could be liable for deportation. They include children in care, elderly, homeless people, those in hospitals or suffering domestic abuse, or people who live chaotic lives and who don't manage their paperwork well. Many others need the help of charity workers to deal with the Home Office system and may not understand that they have to reapply once they have been in the country. The Westminster Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has defended plans to cut the army numbers by nearly 10,000 troops and called on other NATO countries to step up their defence spending. Speaking as Western leaders gathered in Madrid to discuss the alliance's most significant transformation for a generation, the Foreign Secretary suggested there was no end in sight to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ms Truss pushed back against any false peace or territorial compromise being reached with the Kremlin, took swipes at several of her cabinet colleagues, and called for Taiwan to be supported more in the face of threats from China. Splits have broken out over the government's response to the Ukraine invasion during Boris Johnson's international tour, with the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace pushing for the department to get a significant funding increase, and the head of the British Army calling the plan to reduce the army from 82,000 to 72,500 perverse. Liz Truss defended the cut in troop numbers, telling BBC Radio 4's Today programme, "We all need to recognise that warfare is now different to warfare as it was 100 years ago or 200 years ago." Ms Truss added there had been an extra £24 billion for the UK's defence budget and called on other NATO countries to meet the commitment to the 2% of gross domestic product target. After the Cold War, the West did not collectively spend enough on defence, Truss said, adding, "We all need our allies to step up. I see the 2% as a minimum, and I want to see our allies spend more too." She appeared unimpressed by rhetoric from Johnson and Wallace in recent days. The Prime Minister has claimed that if Vladimir Putin was a woman, they would not have invaded Ukraine. And that's while Wallace has said that the Russian leader has small man syndrome. "I believe that both men and women are capable of doing evil things," Truss told LBC, adding, "I don't pretend that I can conduct a psychological analysis of Putin, nor do I think it's helpful." She told the Today programme, "We will only successfully end this war when Russia is pushed out and there is a proper peace settlement." Asked whether that included Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014, the Foreign Secretary said there should be no trade-offs or compromises with Moscow. Scotland's economic growth forecast for 2023 has been revised down due to the impacts of cost increases on consumers and businesses and the likelihood that these will persist for longer than previously thought. This is according to the latest quarterly economic commentary from the Fraser of Allender Institute at the University of Strathclyde. In the Deloitte-sponsored economic commentary, the Institute forecasts growth of 3.8% in 2022 and 0.5% in 2023. The outlook has significantly worsened for 2023 since the last set of forecasts in March 2022. The commentary examines the latest data on the global, UK and Scottish economies, including detailed analysis of the latest GDP, employment and inflation figures. The analysis in this quarter's commentary shows that consumers are starting to modify their spending behaviour, with over half of consumers reporting they are spending less on non-essentials. In addition, a third of consumers say they are spending less on food and other essentials. It's not just food and fuel, however. The analysis shows that the cost of property, both rental and ownership, are also increasing significantly. Price increases across the board mean that the impacts are being felt differently by different types of consumers. A younger demographic are more likely to say that property costs and public transport services have increased in price, whereas older age groups are more likely to say that food and fuel have gone up. The director of the Institute, Professor Vary Spowage, said, "The data published yesterday on the Scottish economy shows that the recovery from the pandemic is starting to falter. The analysis we have carried out for this quarter's commentary indicates that inflation will be higher and persist for longer than we thought in March. This has the potential to limit the economic recovery we hope to see during 2022 and 2023, as consumers cut back on discretionary spending and businesses limit production due to input costs. These circumstances have led us to revise down our expectations for growth during 2023. Of course, economic forecasting is a tricky business at the best of times, but forecasts are highly uncertain right now." Rishi Sunak has been warned the government is running out of time to save the economy amid a rapidly worsening growth outlook and soaring inflation hitting businesses. The Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce, Siobhan Haviland, said the Chancellor urgently needed to announce a package of financial support for firms struggling with a perfect storm of rising energy prices, chronic staff shortages, and supply chain problems. "They need to put in place support for businesses now," she told the Business Group's annual conference in London. "We are on limited time. The government has until the autumn budget to reset, rethink, and get their house in order." Britain's economy is coming under severe pressure, with inflation at the highest rate since 1982, with the Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey warning the country was facing a worse slowdown than many of its global rivals. Already at 9.1% in May, inflation is forecast to peak above 11% this autumn. Economists at Goldman Sachs said yesterday the chances of a UK recession had risen, coming closer to 50-50. Analysts at the US Investment Bank warned, "We think a recession is more likely in the UK than in the euro area and the US." and recession risks are more front-loaded in the UK, with the current quarter likely in contractionary territory. Official figures show UK households suffered another fall in real incomes in the first 3 months of this year, amid a severe squeeze from soaring energy costs. Real household disposable incomes fell by 0.2% in the first quarter, according to the latest GDP data from the Office for National Statistics. That's the fourth straight quarterly decline in the worst run since records began in 1955. A Savanta Comres poll carried out on behalf of the Scotsman has found that support for independence in Scotland is growing. While the headline in the Scotsman reports that a majority do now want to have a referendum in the next year, however, the proportion who support a referendum happening by September 2023 is now at 40%, and that's an increase on previous polling. The number of undecideds has increased to 10%, with support for independence now at 44%, those saying they would vote against Scotland becoming an independent country down to 46%. With undecideds removed, support for no is at 51% and support for yes at 49%. The SNP Deputy Leader Keith Brown MSP said the poll clearly shows that the Westminster parties are running scared of a referendum as the independence campaign is getting into gear and building momentum, adding that pro-union parties clearly have no positive case to make for continued Westminster rule. Mr Brown said, with the highest favourability rating of any political leader in Scotland, the public continue to put their trust in Nicola Sturgeon to deliver on the priorities and build a better nation for all. He continued, as demonstrated by the first in the series of the Scottish Government's papers on independence, the UK is lagging behind countries that are a similar size to Scotland in a number of key measures and are holding back Scotland from reaching its full potential. The congressional panel investigating the January 6 assault on the US Capitol announced on Wednesday that it has subpoenaed former President Donald Trump's White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, to testify about Trump's activities on the day of the melee. The subpoena, seeking a deposition from Cipollone, followed dramatic public testimony on Tuesday from a former White House aide, who told the panel that Cipollone had warned her that they could face every crime imaginable if Trump went to the Capitol on January the 6th, after delivering a fiery rally speech to his supporters. The Select Committee's investigation has revealed evidence that Mr Cipollone repeatedly raised legal and other concerns about President Trump's activities on January 6th and in the days that preceded, the panel said in a statement. Any concerns Mr Cipollone has about the institutional prerogatives of the office he previously held are clearly outweighed by the need for his testimony, the committee said. Cassidy Hutchinson, an aide to Trump's White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, told the committee on Tuesday that Trump wanted to leave the rally for the Capitol and that he grabbed the steering wheel of the armoured presidential SUV when he learned that the Secret Service would not drive him to the Capitol, where thousands of his supporters rioted. "We're going to get charged with every crime imaginable," Hutchison said Cipollone told her, if Trump were to go to the Capitol on the 6th of January. "We need to make sure that this doesn't happen. This would be a really terrible idea for us. We have serious legal concerns if we go up to the Capitol that day," Cipollone said, Hutchison has testified. A growing number of families are accessing funded early learning and childcare, ELC, across Scotland. The latest figures show that 121,101 children were in funded ELC places at the end of April 2022. That's an increase of 9,527 since January 2022. The entitlement to funded ELC increased to 1,140 hours in August last year, saving families up to £4,900 annually for each eligible child. The ELC workforce also continues to increase, up 357 since January, with 18,421 full-time equivalent staff now working in the sector. This marks a rise of 8,845 since 2016-17. The Children's Minister, Claire Hawkey, said, It is clear funded ELC is making a real difference to families, particularly at a time when so many are struggling with the rising cost of living. Crucially, high-quality ELC also helps to provide children with skills and confidence to carry into school education, and is a cornerstone for closing the poverty-related attainment gap. It's also encouraging to see the workforce continue to grow, and I'd like to thank everyone working in the sector for their continued hard work and dedication. Researchers forced to flee their home countries due to persecution, war, or conflict are being given the opportunity to live and work in Edinburgh in what is described as the most generous support package of its kind. The University of Edinburgh is working in partnership with the Council for At-Risk Academics, CARA, to offer 10 fully funded fellowships, providing sanctuary for their scholars and their families for 2 years. This commitment to fund a further 10 fellows is, to date, the most generous support of any UK university working with the UK-based charity. The funding will be open to academics from across the world who are at risk in conflict-affected areas and fragile states. It is hoped that when the 10 fellows will begin arriving to Edinburgh from late 2022, or when a suitable academic placement is found. The newly announced package of support builds on the University of Edinburgh's existing partnership with CARA. As part of this ongoing commitment, 2 new fellows and their families from Yemen and Afghanistan were welcomed to Edinburgh this spring. CARA was established in 1933 in response to Hitler's decision to persecute and expel hundreds of scholars from German universities on racial grounds. Today, it remains the UK's lead organisation in supporting temporary sanctuary for academics who have been forced into exile or at risk due to persecution, violence, or conflict. Stephen Wordsworth, the executive director of CARA, said, "CARA is enormously grateful to the University of Edinburgh for its decision to provide funding for 10 further 2-year placements without any geographical restrictions. While we are all doing all we can to help Ukrainian academics, there are still many others in danger who need and deserve support in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and elsewhere." And the Scotland women's rugby team will benefit from Scottish Government funding to prepare for the Rugby World Cup in New Zealand later this year. The £144,352 is in addition to the £220,000 being made available by Scottish Rugby, and will enable the 36-strong squad to train full-time as part of an 11-week preparation camp for the tournament, which begins in 100 days' time. The funding will also be used to underpin a promotional campaign to inspire young players in Scotland through the team's involvement in the global competition. The Sports Minister, Marie Todd, said, "This is a fantastic opportunity for the players to compete at the highest level and to showcase elite women's sport." She went on, "I am immensely proud of what the team has achieved so far, and I'm very pleased that we are able to support them financially to represent Scotland at the top level. The players have made huge commitments and sacrifices, and I look forward to watching and supporting them later this year. These women will be role models who motivate, promote, and inspire others to participate in sport and physical activity." And that was our final item this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs, and culture. Please help us to continue to make these programmes, to continue to develop the station, and to make new programmes for you. If you would like to support us, then please subscribe or donate to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen now. You will see our appeals for financial assistance on Facebook and Twitter, because the urgent need for your support has not gone away. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. You can find us on Twitter at Broadcast Scot. Please like and retweet us there. And you also find us on Facebook by searching for Broadcasting Scotland. When you're watching us on YouTube, it would be great if you would like and subscribe to Broadcasting Scotland on that platform. Meantime, we will be here again tomorrow evening with the next edition of Scotland at 7, so please tune in and join us again then. And that's the way it is at very nearly Scotland at 7:25. So thank you to everyone who has been watching us this evening. I hope that you can join us here again on Broadcasting Scotland very soon, and until then, bye-bye.